Hi there. The full script for House of the Dragon's first episode was just publicly released online. I spent a couple hours going through it with an open copy of the finished version of episode 1 that they posted for free on their YouTube channel, and making comparisons between the two, I've compiled a list of the 20 notable changes from script to screen. That this was publicly released by Deadline as part of this page-to-screen special series that they were doing, and we expected something like this because it's Emmy season. And there's some rule that when something is submitted for Best Screenplay nomination, it's publicly available on the Emmys website. That's how we eventually got access to certain key Game of Thrones scripts, and realized this isn't what screenwriting is supposed to look like. So like the season 5 finale, they're breaking basic rules of screenwriting. It looks like a novel, not a screenplay. They're giving notes that do not convey visually. They need to be in dialogue. In contrast, this looks like a real script. That's the big thing to say about it. It says it's credited to Ryan Condal and George R.R. Martin. I don't know how much Martin was specifically involved in scripting it. It's by Martin as well because it's based on his book. He assuredly did a couple of passes on it because it's the first episode, as opposed to, like episode 5 or something. On top of that, I will interchangeably refer to this as the pilot script, even though there wasn't a pilot. Because Condal did say originally we thought there'd be a pilot, that the first script we did months or a year in advance of all the other ones, episode 1 was written in isolation. Then they came back and did the rest of season 1 when they were greenlit straight to series without a pilot. So it is pretty self-contained of just introducing the stakes of the basic series and everything. There weren't that many giant changes, whereas when we looked at even the finished Game of Thrones scripts that they submitted for the Emmys, and just looking at the insane script notes and went, this is bizarre. This is pretty straightforward. One of the interesting things are deleted scenes that we knew of, that we've seen photos of, that the actors have described, are actually, in here with full dialogue, so we get to see the details of things they alluded to in interviews. Those are interesting. Generally, most of them, they should have been cut for time. It's a lot of little things, like a line here or a line there was cut, which is normal for any TV show. There's going to be lines cut. And a couple of scenes were reordered. Now, an interesting thing they do in this, if you read it at the link, is you don't just have the initial draft script. They go through many drafts. And they actually color-coded them. And it says right in the cover, these pages are color-coded, that the first version was white. If we rewrote a line on a page, the replacement page is blue. And it goes white, blue, pink, yellow, green, gold. So if you're looking at something that's green or gold, it's a very late edition. They kept revising it. Like, the dialogue in the opening, the prologue scene at the Great Council of Harrenhal, obviously this is important, so they kept rewriting it to get it just right. But, the blue pages were things that were in there pretty much undisturbed through a couple of drafts. So again, the way I did this is, the first episode is free on Max's YouTube channel. I'll link that. I had that open, and I had this free PDF open, and I just switched back and forth between the two. Now, to make sure this isn't a 3-hour live stream, but something relatively concise, I boiled it down to 20 points. I'm going to do one slide per point, but I'll mention, I expect you to look up the specific dialogue in the script when I point it out, okay? If I read it off line by line, that would take hours. And you can, if you're like a monthly subscriber and you don't have HBO Max subscription anymore, it's free online. You can compare the two, and it's just the art of scripting. It's interesting if certain scenes convey a little differently when they're reordered, or what exactly was their vision for this. So, one thing I will say is 20 points is a nice round number. 21 points, because point 21 is a little more prophecy stuff. with deleted lines for Viserys explaining the prophecy to Rhaenyra, and a deleted scene we knew existed of Daemon and Viserys discussing prophecy in the throne room, and it's 4 pages long. We knew it was filmed. I did those first because they're the most intriguing things. That was point 21, but I'm not including it in this because I handle it in other videos to give it more focus, you see, where I do read it off line by line, and it takes me 15 minutes. But that's point 21. I put that at the end also because chronologically Rhaenyra and the prophecy came last. So let's dive into this. Now, one thing is, as we start here, I'm mostly going in chronological order. I will skip out of order at the beginning to present a theme. Themes are for great book reports that, seeing people picking this apart on social media, they just fixated on, wow, the title card is a little different, or, wow, the ending is a shot of a dragon. I was looking for through lines, themes, or interpretations of characters that changed based on certain things. It's not just, trees instead of the forest and everything. So I'm going to discuss point 3 and 16 out of order at the beginning, and I'll just mention that because they're really about the script as a whole. So to start with, we were horrified when we got our hands on Benioff and Weiss's scripts and realized these are novelists who, by their own admission, do not have screenwriting degrees. And they're writing these small paragraphs micromanaging the emotions that the actors are supposed to be trying to convey, and I do not have the time or copyright stuff to splice it in here. I urge you, watch the clips I've posted of them giving their insane explanations of they genuinely think they're capable of writing. The clip of Brian Cogman saying, I can write an entire scene where an actor doesn't speak and just conveys everything with their face. And the meme we sort of developed for this is these performances, these faces. Not just because Cogman said this infamously during the Sansa rape DVD commentary of, he eventually waffles and goes, why did we do this? To show off these performances, these faces. What horrified me was I realized that's actually a stock phrase that was going around set. That wasn't just an isolated, I'd hear other directors and other DVD commentaries for different seasons using that exact phrase, and I realized this is something Benioff bludgeons people with when they're trying to go, why are we doing this? It makes no sense for the character. Hey, don't you want to show off Maisie? Look at that face emoting like that. This is good acting. And kind of the point of my channel has been pointing out that is not what acting is. If you're just mugging for the camera senselessly, and some of the actors would even complain, I don't know why my character is doing this, which really kind of contradicts their whole conviction that I am capable of writing a full page of script notes that the actor can convey when the actors themselves are complaining this makes no sense. But it was like hyper-specific or bizarre. There'd be jokes in it because it was jokey. I mean, it's as if it was meant to be entertaining at a table read, and they are incapable of empathizing with the viewer, mentally picturing that the viewer can't see the script notes on TV. And there will be all this context and stuff, and this is breaking basic rules of screenwriting. And now Benioff and Weiss are going on to Three Body Problem and stuff. It's people going, oh, well, maybe they learned their lesson. What, don't abandon the source material? Even if they stick to source material, they'll micromanage the directors and cinematography and the VFX and the lighting levels, things they don't know how that works, or like filming logistics, where they said, oh, train the horse to do that in 2 weeks instead of 6. These are technically other jobs than screenwriting, which they'd micromanage. And the cruel joke behind all of it is even what's specifically their job as writers, not showrunners, screenwriting, they don't know how to do that. And it's sad that the news media and journalistic standards have fallen to such a point that people are just fumbling around going, why did this happen? When's the last time you saw a news site actually picking apart one of their scripts and going, this is bad writing? From a screenwriting perspective, you don't put in notes like that. You don't try to micromanage the actor's performance like this. You are not a formally trained screenwriter. And of course, all this came to a head at Austin Film Fest, where they're joking, Brian Cogman doesn't know how to do anything either. He's our personal assistant we promoted up. And then a woman angrily stood up in the Q&A and said, why didn't you hire qualified people like, I don't know, women or people of color? Because it's a room full of writers, career screenwriters with training. And they spent the whole hour saying how this was the world's most expensive film school. We were unqualified. We don't know how screenwriting works. They don't even know how screenwriting works, much less all the other stuff. And I'll link to some of my bigger videos about this. If nothing else, watch the one at the beginning of my channel on the last watch, because I splice those in, including the one where Cogman says, I am capable of doing that. So basically, any time in the DVD commentary where you hear them ranting about the faces, alarm bells are going off that they think... I still don't know if they genuinely convince themselves that's how screenwriting works, or if they're just... Are they self-consciously showing off the actors? Oh, the actors can convey that. Or do they believe their own lies? I don't know anymore. Well, in contrast, this script doesn't do that. I'm sorry to put this all at the beginning, but it's an overarching theme for the whole script. It looks like a normal script based on other ones I've looked at. In all the years we've been yelling about these guys and going, this isn't what screenwriting looks like. Why did I say this was specifically point 3 in chronologically originally? There's like 2 points where you do see a paragraph-sized script note, but it's when they're describing a location or an organization, not emotions, that micromanaging the actors through trying to convey a character's inner thought monologue. That what surprised me, and I noted the third thing in here, is when Rhaenyra arrives at the Dragon Pit, there's a short paragraph explaining what Dragon Keepers are. Because they're a little different from the book version, but they got George R. R. Martin's go-ahead for this. I actually think it's an improvement, where they came up with this idea that the Dragon Keepers are almost a monastic order devoted to the old Valyrian religion. They worship the dragons, and it's just this paragraph going, this is what they're like, and there's always an acolyte and an apprentice, and they carry obsidian daggers, and that's it. That the only notably sized, more than one line long script notes were, well, this is what this organization is like. Just as a note for that. And I said there's another one later on, there's a paragraph describing what Flea Bottom is like. Just in context, it's a slum district, this is a really rough part of town, people are struggling to survive here, this is a dangerous slum area. Again, it's not describing character thoughts. It's just a location description. And it's not even that long, and it's nothing like the script notes we saw in what Benioff and Weiss did. And it was refreshing that just how different this was. And again, the biggest thing I'm annoyed about isn't that they did that, but that more news sites weren't even pointing that out. This is all public information. You could have looked at their scripts and went, this is really bizarre. Like, remember when we actually got our hands on the season 8 scripts and that whole, where it makes that wisecrack about Daenerys has the dragon wings behind her. It looks like her satanic majesty's request, which is like some music reference. Like, were the actors at the table read supposed to pick up on this? At points it also says, like Sansa looks like girl with the French lieutenant's wife. Sophie will have to Google that. Wait, what? You don't make scripts like that. So that was point 3. I'm going out of order. It looks like a normal script in terms of the notes it's giving. Somewhat related to this is point 16, which is about Daemon. And it happens more than once. Daemon in the original script, and when I say original, I mean it's this snapshot of at a certain point in time, this is what the script looked like. And you can even see, like, the blue pages are older, the gold pages are revisions that were made. So in this older script, and not necessarily the original, but in this pilot script, Daemon is a lot more mercurial and unpredictable. And he's a lot more casually violent. Little things, like, Well, we had heard leaks that this scene was probably filmed. It was from the tournament where someone in the crowd jeers him Lord Fleabottom, and it says he shoots him, "I'm going to kill you, look." And he believes it, and he sits down, and the heckler sits down really quickly. That they just emphasize Daemon is dangerous to be around, and he could attack people. There's like a note that when Viserys banishes Daemon, he's individually better than any of the three Kingsguard in the room. But against three of them, he knows it would be suicide. But even Daemon doesn't know if, am I going to rush them anyway because I'm that angry, or am I going to leave? And even Daemon, wow, I left. That there's always a small chance that even Daemon doesn't know that he might do something crazy. But the big thing that set this off for me that was notably different is when he's having sex with Mizaria in the brothel. And when you rewatch this scene, he's nothing but tender in it. Well, he's not angry at her. Well, he's sulking. Like when she first puts a hand on him to console him, he smacks it away. Not like violent, but just, the way, they were from a different generation, but you know how, like, in the Sean Connery, James Bond era, he would, like, playfully swat a woman's hand away if he was busy doing something? I remember that was the beginning of Goldfinger, but little things like that. And the biggest point is, and I really don't think they'd use this in the final version, it says, after she gives her speech trying to console him, "You're Daemon, you're the Rider Caraxes, you're Prince of the City, they're not just going to throw you out." It says he gives her a look like he doesn't know if he's going to slap her or if he's going to burst into tears. Because he wants to hear everything she's saying, that she's consoling him, but he's so embarrassed he doesn't know. His first instinct would be to slap her. He doesn't. He wants to burst into tears, and he's that dichotomy that's fighting in his mind of his pride of, do I slap her for saying, you can cry, but I really do want to cry. He's written practically bipolar, he's so mercurial, and that's not a good analogy because bipolar people don't switch moods in a matter of minutes. I mean, it happens over hours or days. Like in this, he's such a wild card within a scene, he'll be changing very quickly. And that even he doesn't know if, am I going to slap her, or am I going to not just cry, but literally burst into tears like he has some sort of pathology. And they cut that for the better. Why? Culminating everything I've been talking about for the past 15 minutes. No actor could convey that. The script note, and it isn't, there are very few script notes like that. This is maybe the only one surviving into this version of the script. This one thing going, he gives her a look like he doesn't, and not even gives her a look, he looks at her like he doesn't know if he's going to slap her or break down crying. That he's that upset. Like, you cannot convey that non-verbally. That's something Benioff and Weiss would do. And they dropped it entirely. In the finished version, he isn't even glaring at her like that, and he doesn't smack her hand away at the beginning of it. You get no hints that he is that he could be potentially, I wouldn't say violent, but a little casually rough with people when he's angry. You do not get that. And I understand this is one of the big things I outlined in the problems the show is facing. First, you need more episodes. Another is, it is really hard to write gray characters. Look at how Game of Thrones flanderized the hero characters like Saint Tyrion, when he's a very, very morally dark character by the 5th book, of just the things he is willing to do. That the loose comparison is, we go, well, Daemon's a bit like Oberyn. He's also more like Book Jaime, where he's not bad, he's not quite good, but more so, and Martin has singled out, he's such a gray character, there are no heroes or villains. I know some people are upset when, like, Sarah Hess said, Daemon isn't a good person, he is a flawed person, that even, like his relationship with his brother, he loves Viserys, but it's this constant push and pull because he feels slighted. And I got that. I got what she was trying to say, and it depends on whether you think that they executed it well. But people were really angry about the general point that he's not a pure good person. He is like a rogue prince. That I worry that fans are going to attach themselves to characters. And the reason I'm such a Rhaenyra fanatic is because she is flawed. because I enjoy the writing of a flawed character, just as like Stannis was such a flawed. But people are surprised, why is this Dark Horse Stannis so popular? Because he's a gray character, or he has his own code. He does things the way he wants to, law and order, lawful, neutral. Is interesting compared to I'm the pure good guy. And even Jon Snow in the books isn't what they turned into in the TV show. So this culminates all the criticisms of that. I don't blame them for putting this in an early version, mind you, of the script. That he shoots her, he looks at her like he doesn't know whether to hit her or break down crying. That is the kind of character Daemon is. That he's on the edge all the time. But they were wise to not do this in the final version. Because that's what sane people do. And I don't know if they wrote the role with Matt Smith in mind as such. Because the book, preceded this by years. The book's been out for 9-10 years by now. I do know that later by the casting phase, by the casting phase, there were no auditions. They handpicked. They did say our top pick is Matt Smith. Specifically because of his role in The Crown. In the early seasons of that. They said it's a similar role, and I see the similarities in that, but they wanted specifically him by the casting phase, and they might have rewritten it to match him, or in consultation with the actor to play it differently. At this snapshot in time, this earlier script version, we see one revision out of several revisions. I don't know if they knew Matt Smith was playing the role when they wrote this snapshot of the script. But he's just a little more dangerous throughout, little things he does. But the biggest thing is just that you can't convey with a script note, gives her a look like, am I going to do something violent or not? And there's other points, like throughout the series, where it's like confronting Rhaenyra on the bridge at Dragonstone in episode 2 with the dragon egg, where he's not really sure what he's going to... How do you write a character who non-verbally has such a hair-trigger temper that they don't know what they're going to do? And convey that. That is hard to write. And I sympathize. But this really struck me that they took out this one thing that kind of reminded me of what Benioff and Weiss would have written a full paragraph about this, micromanaging the look he gives Mysaria. And they cut that out entirely by the final version. Actually, there's an age barrier on this, obviously, because of the sex and nudity, but free on YouTube. Rewatch that scene of him and Mysaria, you do not get the impression he's about to be violent. Or crying, he's just being moody. And there's little beats like that throughout, so... Again, I'm trying to avoid 3 hours, we're probably going to run an hour in this, but those were the long things where I had to explain thematic, running things. It's going to go faster after this, okay? So I said chronologically, in my list of 20 points, that was point 3 and point 16. Now, for the rest of this, I'm going to go in chronological order so it's easier to follow.